Good morning everyone and welcome to this week's assembly. My assembly this week is on the exam season because it is that time of year. We're literally right in the middle of it. Many students in our school and right across the country are doing GCSEs, A-levels, but also many of you are doing internal exams as well. And really this is about our wildly important goal that focused hard work and relentless attention to detail are the things that really make the difference. So here's my first kind of virtual assembly. What's your approach to exams? How do you take them? Are you the kind of person that kind of goes, oh yeah, brilliant, I'm so delighted I've got exams, I can't wait to get on with them, they're going to be fantastic, it's a brilliant opportunity, I love the challenge, it really brings a purpose to my learning and I'm going to give it my best shot. Are you that kind of person? Or are you the kind of person that kind of goes, I'm not quite so sure, I don't really like them, in fact I'd rather not do them at all, but it is a fact of life, it's kind of unavoidable, what will be, and if I don't try then I can't really fail, can I? So I think I won't bother trying, I think that would be better. Or are you the kind of person that thinks, oh my God, exams are just the worst thing ever and my life is going to end? Do you take exams with a huge amount of stress? Do you find them very worrying? Do you think teachers are just being mean to you for setting you these exams? And do you kind of go in with the outset that thinking, well, actually, I'm probably going to fail no matter how hard I try, but I will try? You're probably somewhere on that scale. Most people are. I did a bit of looking into exams on the internet when I was looking for some inspiration for this assembly, and I found some things that made me chuckle, and I hope you'll like these. Some people who took a slightly different approach to some exams. So these first few answers I'm going to show you, these people have answered the questions, but perhaps not quite in the way that the examiner was expecting. So the first one is what ended in 1896. So clearly that's some kind of war or perhaps an epidemic, an illness of some kind. Somebody wrote the correct answer, 1895, which is right. The next one is another kind of, well, it's a sort of mathematical one, this one. How do you change centimetres to metres? Well, obviously you take out centi. That's how you do it, isn't it? Surely. Next one's one of my favourites, hard and soft water. What is hard water? Hard water is ice. I just would have loved to have been as brave as that to write those kind of answers in my exam. One of these ones, this one's one of my favourite ones as well. The next one, naming these shapes. You've got to name these quadrilaterals. The thing is, for this person, they've totally missed the fact that they've given the possible answers on the top right of the paper, but they've given them some much more imaginative names. I like the name Bob for a square. Let's all call squares Bob from now on, shall we? Here's another maths one. Love these. I was not very good at maths when I was at school, so perhaps that's why I've chosen the maths ones. I found it very difficult. But here we go. Find x. Well, here it is. You've put it on the paper for me. I've just put a ring around it for you. There is x. Not quite what the examiner was looking for, though, I don't think. Here's another maths one. The difference between 180 and 158 is 22. Correct. How did you find your answer? Well, I used some maths. Okay, yeah, not sure again. That's quite what the examiner was looking for. Here's a history example. Where was the American Declaration of Independence signed? I think they were probably looking for a city or perhaps a state or something like that. But at the bottom is the correct answer. It is signed at the bottom. And here's my last maths example. Here it is, look. Expand. You know, you have to expand brackets and stuff like that. I don't think that's what they mean by literally making it wider. I think you're supposed to do something else apart from that, but I don't know. Like I say, it was not my strong point at school. This little guy, Frankie here, this one is asking him about how he earns his pocket money. He says, quite honestly, I don't. I'm a freeloader. Very honest, at least. I think they were probably, again, looking for something slightly different. These people, though, took a different approach again because they didn't actually like the questions were being set, so they've set a challenge for the examiner. This one here, this person has got a real sense of duty and a sense of what's right and wrong. You're supposed to fill the gaps in and they've given you the correct words that you're supposed to use, but for the second sentence, this person didn't like this question at all because you shouldn't hit dogs. So let's not put the word hit in, let's put pet in instead. I really hope the examiner gave the correct answer for that because I'm totally with that person. I think they're spot on. Here's another one that's to do with animals. Took me a while to notice what was going on here, but you've got two tall giraffes eating from a tree, and then you've got one underneath who's a bit shorter. And eventually, because he can't reach the tree, he dies out, and there's a little skeleton at the bottom. So the diagram's meant to show some kind of evolution, I guess, being played out in front of you. But I think this person is right. Option E is good. Giraffes are clearly heartless. Why didn't those taller ones snap some branches off and give them to the shorter one? It's not very good about looking after each other. Anyway, that's my little lot about silly exam answers, and I quite like those. What I also did was I spoke to some teachers and I asked them some questions about exams, because I think it's easy for us as teachers quite a lot of the time. We're the ones that set all these questions, and we expect our students to do well, and we expect them to learn and make sure that they're prepared for their exams. Well, I asked them some questions about how they actually did in some of their exams. So these are the questions I asked. I asked them, what's the hardest exam you've ever taken and why? Which exam result are you most proud of and why? And which exam result are you least proud of and why? And do you have any interesting stories to share about exams that you took when you were at school or even later on in life? Because people don't just take exams at school. You'll know that some of your staff have taken exams recently because they're keen to know how these new exams work. But mainly these are stories from when staff were at school. So my first one then was, what's the hardest exam you've ever taken? And for both Mrs. Wareham and Mr. Backshall, it was exactly the same thing, and I have to say I sympathise entirely. For them it was GCSE maths, because they struggled with it and they found it really difficult. Mr. Catt, clearly a maths genius, his was something slightly different, and I had never even heard of this. He did an exam in reinforced concrete design, and for that he had to learn 4 A4 pages of formulae. Sounds absolutely hideous. No wonder it was quite hard. Mr. Brixey, he found any of his saxophone exams quite hard, because as part of a music exam you might know that you've got to sing a bit. So perhaps in a future assembly we need to get Mr. Brixey to sing to us. I don't know, maybe that's just a bit mean. My second question then was about which exam results are you most proud of and why? So Mr. Peck was most proud of his cycling proficiency badge, because he'd actually got knocked off his bike in the practice exam by one of his teachers, but he managed to pass the cycling proficiency nonetheless. Miss McInerney is most proud of her GCSE French exam, and this one surprised me, because you'd think as a linguist this wouldn't be something that would be something that she'd really find all that challenging, or that she'd be all, that she should be proud of all of her results. But why this one particularly, it struck me as being a bit odd. But Miss McInerney said she surprised herself, because she found French a lot harder than German at school, and she had to work really, really hard on it. And she didn't think she was capable of achieving the grade she got. So there you go, it can sometimes be something surprising. Got a couple of interesting ones when I asked staff about which exam results they were least proud of and why. So Miss Holt said she was least proud of her degree exam on invertebrate zoology. Her answer was not what I was expecting. It wasn't because she didn't do very well, or it wasn't that she hadn't revised or anything like that. Her answer was, well, was this. She said, I failed because I made some poor life choices and I didn't prepare. I listened to what others said and didn't do what I knew was right. I thought there was a real lesson in there. That's a really, really good answer, and I really liked that one. Mr. Moforth, a little bit more practical here. He said he is least proud of his ASPE exam result because he put no effort into the exam at all, because he had another exam on that day that meant a bit more to him. So he's feeling a little bit sort of, well, I wish I'd tried perhaps a little bit harder in that one now, and could have done a bit better. So finally then I asked staff if they had any interesting stories about exams, and I had a very interesting response from Mrs. Gooder. When Mrs. Gooder first took her GCSEs, the day of her first GCSE exam, she woke up in agonising pain. She had terrible pain down her back. So of course her parents obviously took her to the hospital in an ambulance because she was in that much pain. They checked her over, did lots of scans, x-rays, all that sort of thing. They could not find anything physically wrong with her at all. What was wrong with her was that she'd got herself so anxious that actually she'd come out in a psychosomatic illness. She clearly went on and did well, otherwise she wouldn't be doing what she does today. But a really interesting story, I think. The second member of staff who gave me a good story on this was Mrs. Heather, and she said she did one of her degree modules was accountancy, I think it was, and maths, and she said she actually had to look at the first couple. She read the first couple of pages of the exam, thought, oh my goodness, this is so hard. She actually turned the paper back to the front page again and had to check if she was sitting the right exam, because she thought, I don't even know what this is, I don't recognise it. And of course in that situation anyone's going to get themselves into a complete panic, but actually she was okay because she got a grip, and she actually gave some advice which she now gives her students, which was to calm down a moment. And what happens, of course, when you panic is that your brain sort of kicks into fight or flight mode and just goes, I can't do this. And the only thing you can do is to try and slow your thinking down and make sure you give yourself some time and get some oxygen into your brain. So that was a really, really good message. And clearly, again, Mrs. Heather got there in the end, and she did it and passed using that method of just taking some time and slowing down. Another interesting story again was Miss McInerney, and anyone who's been taught by Miss McInerney or has done any speaking exams with her will maybe find this one quite interesting, that Miss McInerney cried before her French GCSE oral exam because she was so nervous and so terrified about how it was going to go. And now she feels guilty every single time when she carries out oral exams every year with students, because she knows exactly how it feels, because she hated the experience so much herself. And then one little one to finish off with. Mr. Backshaw had a brilliant story that I just had to share with you. And he was doing his A-level exams. One exam, however, was interrupted, or delayed, in fact, the start of, because some pigeons were apparently in the rafters being rather noisy because they were creating new pigeons while that exam was going on. So they had to obviously stop students coming in and so on, so couldn't actually get on with the exam. So some key messages from your staff here. Well, obviously there are some things here that would resonate with all of us. Number one, you've got to do the preparation. There are no shortcuts. You have to put the hard work in. Number two, stay calm. Make sure that no matter what happens on the morning of an exam, as you go in, you've got to be calm. No matter what you've done, how much revision you've done beforehand, if you can keep calm, you will definitely do better. Panicking is definitely not going to help you. Miss Holt's message, believe in yourself. Don't listen to what other people say. Believe in what you think is right and stick to your plan, because listening to what others do isn't necessarily going to work for you. So then the fourth one is about knowing yourself. Make sure you know what your own strengths are and where the gaps in your knowledge are, and go for those gaps in your revision. Don't revise things that you already know. Revise the gaps. What don't you know? Be brave enough to say, I don't know that, I'm going to work on it. And I think my final point comes from Mr. Cat, which is don't ever do an exam in reinforced concrete design, because it sounds absolutely hideous. So just to round off this morning then, I'm going to sort of talk to you about a couple of things about the importance of exams and whether they matter. And yes, of course they do matter. We do have to check students' progress. We do have to make sure that there are opportunities for development throughout the stages of your learning. You do have to do exams. That is a fact of life. It would be unfair of us not to give you opportunities to do those in school as a practice before you actually have to do them in the real situation. You need to demonstrate your own ability to learn independently, and that's an important skill through exams as well. And knowing yourself about what works well for you and how you need to improve. So for all of those reasons, exams do matter. However, do they matter that much that you need to get yourself in a state like Mrs. Gooder did? That you need to get yourself so anxious about exams that you cry before them like Miss McInerney did? No, they don't matter that much, because nothing matters that much to affect your own mental health. It is part of the full picture that we take when we're assessing students. You have to accept that you could have a bad day, you could have a bad exam, but that doesn't mean that they're all going to go badly and that everything will be bad after that. There will be other opportunities, and you need to keep your stress levels in check. What's very easy is to get yourself into a frenzy of panic amongst your friends and going, I haven't revised. Have you revised? No, I haven't revised. I don't know anything. That's really not a helpful way to go into an exam. You need to be thinking calmly and thinking, okay, I've done what I can now. I'm going to go in and do my best. And I'd just like to finish off really thinking about, I guess, where we started from, and that's the idea of the focused hard work does bring rewards. But what we're all about here at the Weald, and what we make sure we talk about in every key message with you, is that it's not about what your grades are that matter so much. It's about whether you have done your best. And what your best isn't going to be the same as what your neighbour's best work is, because you are your own independent individual person. You need to feel proud in yourself of what you've done, because that's the most important thing. Thank you for listening. Have a lovely day.